I'm with Genevieve Gribble of Vivos again today. Genevieve, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Genevieve, an issue that has often come up in IEP meetings for high school students is the issue of guardianship. Could you talk about that today?
Yes. This is a very interesting and stressful area. So I'm going to distinguish, Emmylou, between guardianship over a minor and guardianship of an adult child with a disability. There are, as a parent, you have all these rights over your minor child. We really encourage parents of children with disabilities to have a will drawn up where they designate a guardian of their minor child. And this is because we encourage everybody to have a will if they have minor children where they designate a guardian. But in the case of a child with a disability, it's particularly important.
Oh, I can see it is.
So a lot of times children with disabilities have certain regimes. They have difficulty with transitions. There are certain things that parents do, and maybe they just do them automatically, by the time the child is a little older, that make life more smooth running with that child.
Change is hard.
Yes,
change is hard for these children.
Yes.
And to have to go with someone they don't even know or they don't know well, they haven't been around much, that would be devastating.
That would be devastating. It also, for those people who become guardians of a child with a disability, it is very hard if they don't know triggers, things that might set this child off. Imagine going to the store with a child with a disability, and there's, the parents knew, we never go down this one aisle because my child never wants to leave the store if we go down this aisle and there's something on there and then if we try to get them to leave, there's a huge meltdown. You don't want to leave that up to whoever you've designated as guardians to find on their own. You've already gone down that road. Your child's already traveled that road. So you don't want to put that extra pressure on either the guardian or your minor child. So what you do is you design a care plan. And the care plan gives insights into what works with your child. What are things that you have found in the past work? What are things that you found don't work? How do you have a bedtime routine? A bedtime routine could be, it can be the difference between, good night's rest and no sleep for weeks for guardians.
And if they weren't already well acquainted with whoever had agreed to be the guardian, they would have time to get to know them, to spend time with them.
Yes.
Hopefully it's not needed, we don't.
But this is something that we want to have in place. So you designate in your will, and then whoever is designated guardian would use the will as the document they present to the court, and the court will give preference to the parents, their choice on who they would like to have as guardian.
Okay, and now the second form is when the student turns 18.
Yes, so once a child turns 18, and this is the interesting thing, your child may still be in school. Some children turn 18 while they're in their senior year or even junior year, depending on when they started school.
They have until their 22nd birthday.
And that's right. Children who are, going under the IDEA, they are in school. They can be in school, depending on how they do that senior year. They can be in school until 22. But the law does not recognize any difference between your child with a disability and any of their neurotypical peers when it comes to becoming an adult, a legal adult, and that happens at age 18. So many parents have an unpleasant experience when their child first turns 18, and let's say that they go to the doctor, and the doctor is, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, and they say, well, we can't have you here in the same room unless your child gives permission, because your child is now 18. They're now a legal adult, and legally you no longer have a right to know.
It changes the IEP
details.
process.
Yes.
They can't even be in the IEP if the child has not given permission.
Yes. So there are ways to get around that are not as complicated as guardianship. there are things, you can have a medical power of attorney. You can have a power of attorney for financial purposes or other purposes. Something like that would enable a parent to be involved in those matters that are necessary. But those documents have serious limitations when it comes to the care of a child with a disability. Guardianship is a process by which the law, through the court system, declares that an individual is incompetent and designates a person, appoints a person to be their guardian. And that guardian has the rights of a parent over that individual who is an adult. So it can be a full guardianship, takes away all of those adult rights. Okay, so this is a very serious matter. There are cases in the law, what we like to see in the law is we like to see a more limited guardianship. That is what is preferred. But there are many cases where the individual simply needs to have that full guardianship.
Yes, there are times when it is appropriate. I know parents worry about, am I taking away my child's rights? But there are times
when the child's decision-making facilities are not developed well enough so that they don't do adequate self-care on a daily basis, or they are not. This is one we see where we do a combined guardianship and conservatorship. Conservatorship is over money matters. So if a child has no idea of the value of money, you really do not want to have your child taken advantage of. There are all sorts of free offers out there, but they're not free. There are offers of credit cards. There are and if you have seen that your child is easily persuaded.
Think if a friend asked them to co-sign on a car loan.
Yes, something like that. Your child, as an 18-year-old, is a legal adult, and legally, unless the court gives that guardianship, then your child can co-sign, and they will be responsible for whatever happens after that. I have a brother with special needs, and this was a couple years ago. He co-signed a membership for a gym for an athletic team, and he wasn't an active member of the team, but he was friends with the guys on the team, and they had said, "Hey, would you co-sign for us? Co-sign this membership?" And he said yes, and he ended up being stuck with a bill that was $3,000 or $4,000 that he had to end up paying, and he never used it. Like I said, this was just, I want to be nice, I want to, and he is very easily persuaded. Now, if my parents or someone else had a guardianship over him, then they would have gone in, as soon as that was signed, they could have gone in and said, presented the guardianship, the letters of guardianship, and said, this person has a guardianship in place, and this contract is void. So those are the kind of powers that power is not something that you can get through a power of attorney. That power to void a contract, that comes with a guardianship or conservatorship. So you can't.
What's the process for if a parent determines this is going to be necessary to protect their child?
So you're asking if they want to have a guardianship?
Yes. If they have decided to protect my child from people taking advantage of them or just making unwise financial decisions.
Okay. So here are some things. There's two parties in a guardianship. There's the proposed guardian and there's the proposed ward. The proposed guardian that's the parents, usually, a lot of times. They do not have to be represented by counsel. They can proceed under an action that we call pro se. So they represent themselves in court. That can be done. The ward has to be represented by counsel. They can't represent themselves.
That makes sense.
The petitioners are actually making the argument that this person is incompetent. So they are required to have an attorney. If the parents, this is recent law, if both the parents and the ward are indigent, then you can get a court-appointed attorney. If both parties are not indigent, someone will have to pay for that, for the guardianship proceeding. The law does allow that the proposed ward, will pay for those costs and will pay for their attorney. That's a little more information than maybe we need to get into here. But let's say that here in Utah, we have some classes that you can take if you decide to represent yourself in court. I often meet clients who took the class a couple years ago. I know some people who took the class 3 years ago. They filled out all the paperwork. They still have not filed. That, in my estimation, that's because it is complicated. And if you go on the paperwork that you fill out is through an online court assistance program, and it's called OCAP. Right there on the web page, it says, this is not, if you have questions, you need to seek legal advice.
Yes. Yes.
So it's
a little more complex than filling out a form.
It can be complex, and it also can depend on your situation. In the classes and with the online program, if you just go and fill out the paperwork online, your situation may not fit that. So
yes,
I encourage people to have the work done by an attorney, especially if they've taken the class and they just haven't gotten in and filed because they're nervous. They think, I don't really know what I'm doing. Then I really strongly recommend that you have an attorney.
And the services you provide as
an attorney, yes,
Vivos.
at Vivos. So as an attorney, I have access to the online system where we file all the documents online, and we draft our own documents. We know what they look like. We know what the court is expecting and what the judge wants to see, and how to get the best information to the court, so that the judge, when he's making that decision, has enough information in front of him to say whether he thinks that this person really is
You
incompetent
probably
or
know
not.
some of the things that might not have been on the website that would make a better case.
Oh yes, but it's not just that. I've gone through OCAP and looked over the things. It's just that for a lay person, it's confusing.
Yeah.
As an attorney, I look at it and I know what they're talking about and what they're asking for.
Yeah.
But a lay person
been through it several times.
Just doesn't know that. It's not necessarily intuitive. People can do that though. That is an option. But I really encourage people, if it's been 3 years, if it's been 2 years, if you have taken that class and you still haven't filed, I would recommend seeing an attorney and getting representation for yourself, so that it actually gets done.
Yes.
So
that makes sense.
And I encourage in guardianship, a lot of times it's better to do it sooner rather than later.
Now explain that. I've heard you say that before.
So this is what I have found.
Okay.
When an individual with special needs is still at home, they're being taken care of by their parents. A lot of times they have this support system in place that enables them to function at a fairly high level.
Yes.
But that is because they have a support system in place.
Mom and dad are waking them up in the morning.
Yeah. If that support system were to suddenly be removed, then that person could have some really bad outcomes.
Yes.
But as they get older and they have more and more interactions with different people, it's very easy for an individual with special needs to be taken advantage of by people. We always do the friends. That's what we call them for my brother, because there are people who are kind of unscrupulous.
Yes.
They know this individual is easily persuaded.
Yeah.
They get to know him. They're like, hey, this is a person who will take us all out to eat. If we have a birthday party, we can ask this person to provide all of the pizza, even though we never ask them to come to any other party.
Yeah.
An ordinary person, a neurotypical person would say, you want me to provide all the pizza to a party? You haven't invited me. to a party for 6 months.
Yeah.
No, why
they
would I
be
do
right
that?
on that?
But an individual with special needs can have some issues there.
Oh
where
yeah.
They
want to be
they
liked.
say yes. And if someone says to them, "I'm your friend," they may just believe them.
Oh yeah.
And I see this time and time again, especially with my brother. I've seen it over and over again where he has been taken advantage of. But these people, he believes these people. They're cool. They're cool, and they say they're my friends, and it wouldn't be cool to have a guardianship. That wouldn't be cool. I'm a grown up. I make my own choices, things like that. But without understanding that, number one, this person totally took advantage of you, and mom and dad bailed you out by providing $3,000 or $4,000 to cover that.
Yes.
Or going and working with the car dealership to get that car returned. And there are these different things. Without looking at that, it's just, I'm not really disabled, or it's not cool to have somebody making decisions for me. But those decisions are what is keeping that individual safe and keeping them with a kind of a modicum of standard of living.
In some cases, employed. Keeping them employed.
Keeping them employed and contributing.
So the sooner after they turn 18.
So, as soon as they turn 18, that's when the law allows you to apply for guardianship.
Okay.
And if you have a good relationship with your child, there really is no reason not to. And if your child, it may be that your child at 18 simply is not ready to assume the full responsibilities of adulthood. But maybe at 25, they are. And that guardianship can be revisited.
Okay.
If there are
so
different
it's not
circumstances,
set in stone.
It's not set in stone.
Okay.
It can be revisited. We can go back. It could be limited. It could be revoked. If the individual really truly doesn't have any
really
issues,
is independent.
sometimes that is more rare, but that can still happen. But what I've seen, which is really, really hard, is like an individual who basically, as an adult, gets reduced to homelessness.
Yes.
And the parents can't get them in for medical care. They're having psychotic episodes.
Yes.
This is something I've seen a lot of.
Oh, that's a heartbreak.
But they can't check that child in.
Yeah.
I've got to.
Because they're an adult.
Yeah. Yes, they're an adult, and so they might be doing things that are life-threatening, that are threaten, other people, but their parent can't step in and say, you are going to rehab, or you are going to a facility to help you get through this patch.
Yes.
Get you back on track.
Get back on medication.
Yeah, they could check themselves in, but they can also check themselves out. And it is so hard. It's just so hard.
Now, I've also seen those cases where the parent feels, well, I have a very good relationship with my 18-year-old. They agree with whatever I suggest. I don't think I need guardianship. What has been your experience there?
This is my experience. Having a good relationship with your child, that's wonderful. But that's not the point at issue. It's not the relationship you have with your child. It's whether your child can truly function as an adult.
Okay.
If your child really cannot function as an adult, whether you have a great relationship with them or not, you should pursue guardianship so that when things come up, when there's ever a question, you can step in and help them. And just because you have guardianship doesn't mean that you have to.
Okay.
You don't have to always be stepping in and doing things.
Right.
But it's the relationship, the good relationship, that's actually not, that's not the issue.
Would you say it's more like a safety net? The guardianship.
Yes.
Is more like
absolutely.
the safety net.
Because maybe your child has never been persuaded by a stranger to do something. And so you think, or persuaded by a friend. So you think, hey, we've got a good relationship. My child's very biddable and does what I ask them to do. I don't see any need for this. But the fact is that if your child, for some reason, was off by themselves at some point, which can happen.
Yes.
They could, maybe someone, if they're biddable enough, maybe someone could persuade them to do something they shouldn't do.
Yep.
So there are things you want to, there's reasons to have that in place that are for the benefit of your child.
And also, you mentioned earlier, if something suddenly happens to the parent, if the paperwork's already in place.
Yes, if you have a guardianship in place, then you would indicate in your will, my child is disabled. This is the successor that I would like to have as a guardian if I were to pass away.
It's more safety net.
Yes, it just adds another layer. So it's really good.
Well, it's good to know all these details about guardianship. I know that it's kind of a emotionally charged point when it comes up in meetings. It's like the atmosphere freezes and no one knows quite how to proceed from there. But it can be a benefit to the student. It's not the parent taking power.
And I think part of it is that a lot of times what I see is I'll see an individual who has, for years, their parents have just really helped them and been that support. Guardianship doesn't actually take away from that individual any rights that they've been exercising.
Okay.
They haven't been. I mean, it sounds so hard. It's like we are taking rights away.
We are
removing rights. Yes. But the fact is that your child, if your child with special needs has sufficient disability, they are not exercising those rights.
Yes.
They're not being exercised at all. And you as the parent are making, you're closing that gap so that your child is protected and taken care of. But legally you're not legally responsible. But I mean, you legally don't have the right. So things could change. There are just funny things that happen, and suddenly you have a child that, is still incapable of exercising those rights, but who is being taken advantage of by some person.
They end up in another town with a group of friends.
Yes. Something
and you
along
have
those
no
lines.
legal right to
go and collect them and say, hey, we're not going to do this. We're going to. So yeah. I think that's something that parents need to keep in mind, just that when they're concerned about taking away the rights, really recognize whether your child is actually exercising those rights, whether your child actually has the ability to exercise those rights. That's what guardianship is about. Okay. It's not about taking away rights that a person is fully capable of exercising. It's about removing rights from a person who cannot exercise those rights and who really cannot exercise them in an appropriate way. And
leaving them with a person who cares about them and is motivated to seek out their best interest. Yes.
So we really encourage people to come in and do a consultation with us and discuss their child's needs, also their child's disability level, to see whether a full guardianship or a limited guardianship would be appropriate, and we can point them in the right direction.
Answer any questions they have.
We can do that. Yes.
That is wonderful. Genevieve, thank you so much for your time.